You'll all see that we're recording this session, just so I know there are a few folk that aren't able to attend today. But it's my absolute delight to welcome everybody to our Funders Forum, and not just any Funders Forum. I think two very, very important parts of that. So, we've got Emma Roddick, the Minister for Equalities from the Scottish Government, here to share why equalities is so important and the opportunities that sport can provide as part of that. But also, this is the first time we've done a focused group for our Funders Forum, and equalities couldn't be a more important topic for us all to be looking at. So I'm really hoping that today inspires some different thinking across both our members and our funders, inspires new relationships, inspires new ways of thinking, and that we can hopefully work together in a different way to help tackle equalities together. So I am delighted at this session, and I'm delighted at the uptake from funders. So thank you all. I know a lot of you've juggled busy diaries to be able to be here today. So I'm incredibly grateful for that. The first thing I'm going to do very briefly before the Minister speaks is I'm going to launch a quick poll. So this is for governing bodies and members only, please, if that's okay. So this is just a very light touch monitoring from our point of view to try and understand where things are in the funding landscape as you guys see them, and what more we can do with the Funders Forum. So there are 3 questions that will pop up just now, and then there'll be a couple of brief questions just at the end again. So if you're able to just take a moment just to fill that in, please, that would be wonderful and very much appreciated. Fabulous. That's great. I think people are just on the last question there just now, so I'll give you just a quick moment there. Wonderful. Thank you very much indeed. Much appreciated. So I'm Kim. I'm the Chief Exec at the Scottish Sports Association, and my colleagues on the call are Marcin, who runs pretty much everything of ours, but Marcin makes sure that technology all works. I'm sure all of those of you that know Marcin know how much of a whiz he is with these things. And my colleague Beck, who runs our Funders Forum, so huge thanks to Beck for pulling everything together today. So I'm going to hand over to Emma now. It's a subject that you're incredibly passionate about, Emma, so I'm incredibly grateful to you for giving up your time today. Thank you.
No, thank you, Kim, and I think just everybody at the Scottish Sport Association for all the work that's gone in to creating this unique opportunity to have an open and informal conversation about how investors can support sport and equalities outcomes across Scotland, and forge new partnerships and relationships. I like that you started there by hoping for a different way of thinking, because I think that's exactly what we need. And we know that sport and physical activity are vehicles for positive change. You've got physical and mental health and well-being, community cohesion, skills development, and a key focus for many sporting organisations is to figure out how they can help to make a difference in supporting the wider equalities agenda and making sure that those opportunities are available to all, and that individuals have equitable access to the many, many benefits that sport and physical activity provide. So it's genuinely really exciting to be able to join you for a while today and just celebrate this event, the first of its kind in bringing investors and equalities outcomes in the sports sector together. Of course, we'll be hearing from sports organisations about some of the future ambitions around projects that achieve equalities outcomes through sports and physical activity, and where there might be potential interest from funders. But overall, it's offering us just this great opportunity to forge all these new relationships and partnerships. Because I know many sports organisations at this session are already doing great work across the sector to provide inclusive opportunities for all. But I think we can probably all agree that there's always more that can be done to optimize that positive impact through collaborative working. As a disabled person myself, I know that it can be difficult to figure out where to get started in sports. I know that it can feel like you have to give up entirely when your condition worsens, or if you don't have the right support to carry on in a healthy way. But equality absolutely remains at the heart of the Scottish Government's vision for a fairer Scotland. And while disabled people, along with older people, women, racialised minority groups, and those living in deprived communities all have lower levels of participation, we are not meeting that vision. In the community that I live in, which is ranked very highly on the SIMD, it's very easy to make it to the local job centre, but you'd have to take 3 buses to get to the leisure centre. And I know from engaging with stakeholders that people with lower English skills really struggle to engage with sports opportunities. And I'm sure that attendees here will know more than most that being active has such wide-ranging benefits, from physical and mental health to socializing, improving confidence, finding other opportunities within your community. But not being active, again, comes with many risks. It comes with a cost to the public purse and, crucially, to life expectancy. So sport really does have the power to change lives, enable and empower people to achieve their best, reduce barriers to participation, and that is something that the Scottish Government is determined to support. So our investment is already being used to drive equality, diversity and inclusion in the sporting system. We've committed to ensuring Sport Scotland's Active Schools programme, which provides more and higher quality opportunities to take part in sport during lunchtime and after school, is free for all children and young people by the end of this Parliament. And that programme takes an inclusive approach and provides targeted opportunities where there is a specific need. Work is also underway to upscale active schools and community sport hubs to further reduce inequalities in sport and physical activity, with a varied focus on inequalities, including care experienced young people, women and girls, mental health, disability and additional support needs, ethnically diverse communities, poverty and low income. So really a huge amount of work going on across the sporting sector that focuses on addressing inequalities in participation. But this forum today really provides an opportunity to identify those areas of common ground, with hopefully new partnerships identified and opportunities for future collaboration and routes to funding. And the Scottish Government and partners across sport want to work together to help explore those new relationships. And I'm grateful to all the funders present who are showing that openness and interest in working in new ways. And I hope everybody here gets something out of today. And once again, just thank you all for your participation.
Thank you, Emma. That's wonderful. And to so strongly echo the commitment that we all share towards equalities and that contribution that we know that sport and physical activity can make, and why that's a priority across government is very, very much appreciated. Saw Marie Todd yesterday and she was really excited herself about it, but she's saying, Emma will be amazing and she's really committed to this. So thank you so much. I really appreciate that. So the next part of the agenda is open for the funders. So we've asked each funder to come and give a little bit of information about what they're doing, what their outcomes and priorities are around equalities, what funds they have available and how they're looking to work differently in a different way. So this hopefully, as the Minister said, opens up opportunities for our members to think differently and how they can engage. So in no particular order, and we've asked each funder to be around about 5 minutes, if that's okay. I'll try and be fairly strict to time if we can, because I'm conscious of timing. We'll kick off with Neil at the National Lottery Community Fund, if that's okay, and then Fiona at Impact Funding Partners. Just so you've got a little bit of a warning there, Fiona, if that's okay. But Neil, I can't see you because I can't see everybody on the screen at the moment, so I'll just mute and you can kick on if that's all right, Neil. Lovely to see you, and I know you've moved heaven and earth to be here today, Neil, so I'm really grateful for that.
Thank you, and 5 minutes, bloody hell. Hello, everybody. Thanks for the opportunity. So the brief here was to say a wee bit about what we, I suppose, are aspiring to do outcomes-wise, what practically, I don't overestimate how interested I am, and I know folk mainly want to know how you get our hands on the money. Quite right too, that's what we're here for. And I should introduce myself. I am Neil Rich. I'm the Scotland Director at the National Lottery Community Fund. So the first thing to say is we've just launched a new strategy entitled It Starts With Community, which describes our aspiration that we will support activities that create resilient communities that are more inclusive and environmentally sustainable, strengthening society and improving lives across the entire UK. In Scotland, we invest around 50 to 60 million pounds every year of National Lottery funding. We also run something called Young Start, which is funded through the proceeds of Dormant Bank and Building Society accounts, as well as operating the Scottish Land Fund in partnership with Helens Realms Enterprise on behalf of the Scottish Government. And our focus on sport has always been about sport as and physical activity, actually, as part of our wider mission to connect people and communities, to enable them to thrive, to promote positive, healthy behaviours, and enable people to enrich their lives in numerous ways. And how do we dig through the system around things we've funded in the past? And I think in the past 3 to 4 years, we've funded around £1,000 projects that include sport or physical activity in some form, and that's everything from supporting Glasgow Afghan United, supporting New Scots to integrate in Glasgow, through Grampian Disability Sport, Able to Sail, Sport and Memories Foundation. So a whole range of different uses of sport as a hook to engage communities and connect people and improve lives. And also, really interestingly, recently we funded the Crickety up in Brechin, really as almost a community anchor that happens to be a sports club. So our focus has always been around how the activity itself is inclusive of people, and sport or the arts or the development of community activity is important in how it connects people rather than as an end in itself. The other thing to say is that we also run awards for all on behalf of 3 of the national lottery distributors in Scotland, including Sports Scotland. So Awards for All has recently had a wee bit of a refresh, and we will fund community activity for up to 2 years for up to £20,000. And in the sports thread of that, funded by Sports Scotland, which is much more about sports specific activity, we can fund up to 1 year for £10,000. So and what I would say about all these things is there's a website that says it's better than me, and there's a phone number on the website, and you can just talk to us and we will talk you through whether or not it's worth you engaging with us and filling in forms and doing all that stuff that funders make you do. Last thing to say, I suppose, on equity and equality, every funder I think can do better, and we're working hard on this, but we have set ourselves a challenge in our new strategy of delivering an equity-based approach to equality. So for us, that means understanding that people have different starting points, and we're focused not just on what we fund, but how we go about funding. So we've been using techniques like participatory grant making. We've been working with organisations like the Scottish Refugee Council, LGBT Youth Scotland, to engage and connect, Youth Scotland as well, to engage and connect with different groups of people in ways that are meaningful and sensible for them. So for us, this feels like a really interesting bit of territory to be in. From a personal level, I get really excited about sport, and at a professional level, we have a strong commitment to improve our performance, I would say, in terms of inclusion and equity. So bringing those two things together is a space where we would expect to be able to help folk. And I think that's on time.
You are within time, nicely within time, Neil. So thank you. I know it's very difficult to summarise everything that you do within that time, but it gives a sense, and it starts, as the Minister was saying, it's a start of a journey. So really appreciate that, Neil. That's super. So we're now going to go to Fiona from Impact Funding Partners, and then we'll go to Laura at BBC Children Need afterwards. So Fiona, please. Lovely to see you again.
Hi Kim, hi everybody. Thanks for having me along today. So as Kim said, my name's Fiona, and I am a development officer at Impact Funding Partners. So for those that haven't possibly heard of Impact Funding Partners before, we did used to be called Voluntary Action Fund. We changed our name maybe back in 2015, I think it was. So we're a fund manager, so we don't kind of own the funds that we manage, but we manage a variety of different funds, all aimed at tackling social justice priorities across a range of equalities themes. So at the moment, we've got funds dedicated to increasing diversity and volunteering, tackling social isolation and loneliness, and supporting well-being. We're also managing the funding for I'm going to, I say in my English accent, Burns House, but it's Burns House. And it's Pathfinders. So it's to test new integrated services and bring about systems change specifically for children and young people. Scottish Sports Association is one of the organisations who's supported currently through the Volunteering Support Fund, and you may have even come along to one of the funding workshops that we hosted in partnership with them back in 2021. And as a result of that, we've had more sports organisations applying for funding specifically through the Volunteering Support Fund than ever before. We currently do have an open fund which closes on Friday. It's not kind of specific for sport, but it is open to anybody and everybody. You might have come across that. That's the Democracy Matters Community Engagement Fund. So we manage that fund on behalf of the Scottish Government, and it consists of a very short application. And when I say very, it's not like a standard application. It is just kind of asking one question, and what you would like to spend the £300 on. And that money will go to hosting a community conversation around key democracy matters themes. So I can send the link to Kim after this meeting if that's okay to circulate. In terms of sport, though, we currently support a range of clubs through our fund management and, as I said, the Volunteer and Support Fund. And we are also working as a key learning partner with the SPFL Trust, supporting their members. And again, happy to share information via Kim on that if anybody would like to know more. We strive for fair funding processes for all. We're currently working with the team at Volunteer Scotland and Scottish Government just now to take forward the ambitions of the 10-year volunteering strategy, which some of you might have heard of before, and lead the way on including key elements in our fund management processes. So that is just a kind of a whistle-stop tour of some of the things that we do at Impact.
Fabulous, thank you, and super in time. So this is going to be great. We're going to have even more time for discussion. So that's wonderful, much appreciated. So we now move on to Laura from BBC Children in Need, who'll be followed by Julie from the Cora Foundation, if that's all right, please. So Laura, lovely to see you. Thanks for coming.
I bet I just knocked your timing out completely. That was really impressive by the first two. I actually was going to try and share a couple of slides. I know it's 5 minutes, but I just thought it might make it easier to understand. Is that okay?
Of course, and you should be able to do that, Laura.
Yeah.
If it doesn't work, this is why Marchin's here. But no, it should work, hopefully.
If it doesn't work, I'll just carry on anyway. So let's see if I can do that quickly. And can you see those, or are you just seeing my whole screen?
No, we're seeing it in sort of draft mode, but yeah, that's come up.
Okay, I'll just go with that just now if I can. So really quickly, I should have introduced myself. I'm Laura Darling from Children in Need. I'm here on behalf of Florence, who heads our Scotland team, but she couldn't make it today. And we're UK-wide, but I'll talk about our grants and kind of what we're doing in Scotland. It's broadly the same, but that's probably more relevant to people who've come along today. So the first slide is just showing really that as a funder, we cover all of Scotland. We've got grants in every council area. I'm based in the BBC office in Inverness usually, and cover the kind of broader Highlands and Islands, massive part of Scotland. The rest of the team are based in the Central Belt, but we split Scotland up between us. So that really helps us understand a bit about what's happening locally and what's needed. So it's usually worth having a chat with the grant manager who covers your area if you're thinking about applying to us. So I'd really encourage anyone who's here to get in touch and have a chat if they are thinking about doing an application. Let's see if I can move this on. And then the second slide is really trying just to show you a little bit about what type of things we can fund. Our funding, obviously, it's children in need, so it has to be targeted at under 18s, and it's got to be targeted at children and young people who are facing some form of disadvantage or challenge. It's deliberately broad. We try and make sure we're funding a really wide range of children across Scotland. So these are just some of the examples of the challenges or disadvantages the children might face. It can be different from this, but I think that kind of gives an idea on the kind of Equalities side, how we try and target things. So we've got their poverty, disability, bereavement, young carers, LGBTQ plus community, rural isolation, mental health issues, care experienced young people, minority ethnic groups. So we try and keep it as broad as possible. And then on top of that, we do keep an eye on what we're funding and what the sort of big needs are at the moment. And we then, if I can move my slides on, also have areas of interest, and these change all the time. But at the moment, we're looking at school-age children, projects building the confidence of boys and young men, 14 to 18, children and young people from Asian and other minoritized ethnic communities, and disabled children and young people. And we also tend to have geographic priorities. So this might be certain local authorities. And at the moment, we're looking at children and young people in remote, rural and island communities where there's additional challenges there. I think it's like Emma mentioned, the number of buses just to get to a sports centre, that type of thing. And finally, This just gives you an idea about our funding opportunities. So the main part of what we do that is probably of interest to you is our responsive grants. So we can provide project and core costs. We've got two types. We've got under 15,000 a year and sort of 15 to 40,000 a year, usually for 3-year periods. You've got to be not-for-profit organisation and you can apply at any time. So that's really, really broad, but that's our main grants that you might want to look at. The other one I thought was worth mentioning is we've just opened our Big Sky Grants programme. So that's looking at geographically isolated communities. So it's quite specific. It's smaller, £5,000 to work with 8 to 13-year-olds around their kind of emotional well-being and mental health. But that's looking at early intervention. So we're looking in particular at maybe sports clubs, brownies, small local groups who are just making that little bit difference with trusted relationships, activities for children. And it's invitation only. So you have to get in touch with us for a chat first. And we're currently opened in Orkney, Shetland and the Western Isles, and we'll move on to other areas after that. So that's the end of my slides. And I think the other things that are kind of worth highlighting, I think somebody else, possibly Neil, said, I think the important thing when we're looking at sport is that we don't just fund activities to say, right, they'll be able to take part in a sport. It's about how the sport's making a difference. So it's whether it's confidence, whether it's them getting a hot meal, it's looking at using sport almost as the hook and the way to bring about the outcomes. I didn't look at the time. I'm talking really, really quickly. I don't know if I've gone over. Sorry, Kim, is that?
That's absolutely perfect, Laura.
Okay.
Please don't worry at all. I know how difficult it is, so no, you are all good.
Yeah.
It's, as I say, we're just blessed to have so many funders with an interest in this area, and as you say, that consistency of message. And you know, we'll hear from the other side in a moment from governing bodies about, as you say, the work that they are doing, and they understand that the difference that sport can make is exactly as you guys and the minister has outlined. So no, that's all wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah.
So next up, we've got Julie from the Cora Foundation and then Grace from the Alliance afterwards. But Julie, great to see you. Thanks so much for coming. I'll hand over to you now.
Thanks very much. No pressure on keeping to time. Everyone has been so good, so I'll try my best. So yeah, I work at the Cora Foundation, which is a charity foundation, and our focus is on strengthening and amplifying people's voices and their own power to make change. Increasingly, we see human rights and action on equity as a golden thread that runs right through all of our work. Our work has two key focuses. The first is that we make grants to groups that are making that day-to-day difference. And the second is that we have a place-based programme that works alongside communities and supports communities to find their own solutions to things like loneliness, poverty and health issues. So we're an equality-focused funder, and we fund sport and fitness activities through that equality lens. As others have said, we take a highly participatory approach, and centering lived experience is a really important part of our process. We're also committed to open and trusting grant-making principles of offering flexibility, trust, and where possible, we offer unrestricted multi-year funding. Partnership with other funders is a really key part of how we work as well. Like impact funding partners, we manage funds on behalf of others, such as STV, Comic Relief, and the Scottish Government. We also work to create new funding pots, bringing funders together on key issues. So we've done that recently with the Household Hardship Fund, which provided local groups with cash first support to help individuals with essential living costs. We've also done that through the Boost Small Grants Fund, which provided core cost grants to really small community groups. So our funds open right throughout the year, and they support everything from a small non-constituted group right through to national charities. We cover a very broad range of thematic areas, which includes support for children and young people, support for care experienced people, support for people with experience of substance use and recovery, and support for Black, Asian and minority ethnic communities. Like others, we make lots of grants to sports-focused organisations, and to give you a sense of the sort of things we'll fund, we've recently provided 5-year unrestricted funding through Henry Duncan grants to several sports organisations. So that's included wheelchair basketball clubs, diving clubs for disabled people, and hiking groups for Black, Asian and minority ethnic communities. We have funded trauma-informed yoga activities for women experiencing domestic abuse. We funded accessible tennis activities for people in substance recovery. And we have funded a whole range of football groups, running, walking, all sorts as well. We currently have no funds open for applications, but we would encourage people to sign up to our funding bulletin, which you can access on our website, and you will get a notification whenever something opens. Throughout 2024, we will have another round of our Boost Small Community Grants, and that had previously funded lots of small sports clubs, particularly groups working with children and young people. We will also have our Henry Duncan Grants opening, which is the 5-year unrestricted funding programme, and that's going to fund organisations working to tackle discrimination. And as others said, we try to be an approachable funder, and we're always really happy to arrange time to have a chat with applicants or with other funders on shared ambitions. And if that is something you'd be interested in, do just drop us a message. Was I on time?
You're well within time, Julie. You guys are absolutely killing it here. It's very impressive. But yeah, it's just wonderful to hear such a breadth of what all's going on. So that's wonderful and really exciting. So thanks very much for that, Julie. That's super. So now we're on to Grace from the Alliance. And then we've got, again, the similarity of funders that fund other people in that sense as well. So after Grace, we'll come to Helen from Foundation Scotland, if that's all right. So Grace, please, if that's all right. Lovely to see you. Thanks for coming.
Hiya, thanks. Nice to see everyone. I'm Grace. I'm the Programme Manager for Self-Management at the Alliance. So as part of that, I manage the Self-Management Fund. So it's about 2 million a year that we have to give out. So just to give you a little bit of background so you kind of understand what Self-Management Fund is, it's created, it's government money, and it's set up to support development of self-management and own health. And as you can imagine, sport can be a really key part of that. We've had excellent projects in the past looking at that. So this year we've got 1.8 million to give out. Nothing currently open at the moment, but do have a look at our website next week. So in terms of our priorities for this year, we know that people are facing quite a variety of barriers that are leading to health inequality. So really our priorities are focused on that. We're looking for projects that are providing support at those kind of key stages of people early on in their long-term conditions, or addressing inequality by targeting kind of risk factors, and also people that are less able to use NHS services, and young people as well, people that are kind of waiting well for specialist services. So we've actually made quite a lot of changes to our process this year to try and make the application process a little bit less burdensome on applicants, and we're hoping that's kind of going to increase the diversity of applications and just make it a little bit easier for people as well. So we've gone to a 2-stage process. For our larger grants, we have sort of small smart starter grants, which have there's less requirements for that anyway, but we're going to have a 2-stage for the larger grants, and that will mean that people that are just not passing the eligibility criteria are not wasting their time doing the full thing. And then we're also going to be doing phone calls with stage 2 applicants. So we're hoping that just having a little bit of a change of process is going to make it easier for people. And then in addition to that as well, kind of looking at the future, we've been doing a lot of work at the data, looking at the data that we've been gathering in previous cycles of the fund, all of the kind of equality data that we gather with that, and we're kind of hoping that with future rounds we can maybe have slightly more targeted pots, things like that. So we're just going to use that to inform what we're doing, and keep working, keep kind of learning from the changes that we're making. So yeah, hopefully that's giving you a little bit of a background. And yeah, I'll share our website as well, so you can all have a look in a little bit more detail next week. Sorry, it's a little bit can't say that much at the moment, but hopefully that's helpful.
That's super. Thanks, Grace, and thanks, Lara. Much appreciated. I appreciate it's difficult. You don't all have the funds that you maybe most want to talk about today, open today, and various bits. So, but I think just getting that broad sense of where to look, how to find information, the types of focus areas that you all have as organisations, I think is incredibly helpful. So that's wonderful. Thanks, Grace. Much appreciated. And now moving on to Helen from Foundation Scotland. Helen, I know you've also moved heaven and earth with your diary today, so I'm really grateful. Lovely to see you.
Thanks for having us. So I'm Helen Ray, and I'm head of philanthropy at Foundation Scotland. But it might be helpful just to explain a little bit about what Foundation Scotland is, if you haven't heard of us. So Foundation Scotland is a community foundation, which means we manage funds on behalf of other people. So we manage funds a bit like Impact Funding Partners that others have mentioned. We all manage funds on behalf of a range of individual and family philanthropists, as well as some corporates, and we support charitable trusts and foundations who perhaps don't have a presence in Scotland and don't have staff in Scotland, and we'll help them with their charitable giving as well. So we have around 400 funds, so there's lots going on and lots of different criteria, so it's sometimes hard, I think, to know what to apply to, and we usually have around 100 funds open at any one time. Our strategic plan and our vision, which helps us try and focus all of those funds into something meaningful, is around making sure we have thriving, resilient communities, and reducing inequalities is a big focus within our strategic plan. And we've been working with the Wellbeing Economy Alliance over the last 18 months to try and look at how we can adapt our grant making to be contributing much more to our wellbeing economy. In terms of sporting and sports thematic funds, we only have one at the moment, which is specifically focused on sport, which is our Bailey Gifford Sports Programme. And that's around increasing participation in sport and reducing any sort of barriers to allow people to access sport. It's not about excellence, providing anything that they feel in competition costs and things like that. However, as others have mentioned, we do have we fund a range of projects where sport is used as a tool. So the primary sort of objective of the project isn't necessarily about somebody being good at football, but actually the outcomes are around employability, increased confidence, better health and well-being, supporting their mental health. So although Bailey Gifford Sports is our sports programme, across all of our programmes we do fund a significant amount of sports organisations to do projects. And currently we have our Essentia Foundation programme, which is open. It's funded a lot of projects around that. That's about supporting children and young people. And we have our merchants company in Edinburgh, which is around sort of thriving communities for the Edinburgh area. We have been trying to do a lot to try and make our funding more accessible. We are currently just about to launch a shorter light touch application form, for example. We're trying to listen to our applicants around sort of barriers for applying for funding and trying to adapt our processes. It's worth mentioning as well that we manage 60 place-based funds across Scotland. So these are funds that are designed and administered, and the decisions are made by the local communities. So a lot of those will provide funding to small sports organisations. Because we're really trying to ensure we have communities where access to activities are easy and available to everybody, no matter where you live. So it's worth having a look at our website and trying to see the geography that you're based in, and filter by geography and see what funds you have. We do webinars for most of our funds, so you can come along and ask questions. And all of our funds have a named advisor. So there's somebody to contact and chat through what your project ID is or what your application ID is. And what we try to do is, if that specific fund isn't suitable, we'll pass you on to another one within the foundation that is suitable. So we're quite a complicated animal, I think, in terms of how our funding looks. And I think our website could probably do with being improved, but I think that might be on our to-do list for this year as well. But I would encourage anybody who's interested in applying just to get in touch and just have a chat with us. I hope that's helpful. And you're still on mute.
Sorry, you press it and it doesn't work. Thank you very much, and well within time, so no pressure on the governing bodies for trying to meet time demands. Thanks so much, Helen. As you say, lots of different things going on, and as you say, it's a great point about all your webinars and things. So again, that's maybe something we can pick up again about how we can share that. And I know a number of colleagues have mentioned newsletters and things as well. So again, Beck, that's a conversation we can have about how we can support information from that. So that's super. And last but by no means least, Alison from Scottish Grant Makers. So Alison, I'm really grateful that you're here. I know it's a slightly different premise as to what you guys do, but again, as the connection that you offer across the sort of funding landscape, delighted that you're able to join us today. So I'll just hand over to Alison, please.
No problem, thank you. And I'm going to go in with Ali, because Alison is very much the Sunday name, or if I've upset you in the half an hour we've been on the call already, I'll take it, but hopefully not. I won't take the 5 minutes either, because as you say, we're slightly anomalous in terms of funders that have presented here. Day job is director of the Wood Foundation, an Aberdeen-based philanthropic foundation, and we have funded a number of community and grassroots sporting activities. We've got a number of health and wellbeing investments ongoing at the moment just now, mostly around core costs and staff costs, and have funded evaluation of a few pilot activities previously that have looked to embed within regulatory bodies or Sport Scotland. But that's a sort of slight aside, although I share a little bit more in discussion later if that's of interest. Scottish Grantmakers, of which I'm privileged to be the chair at the moment, really a network-based organisations of private trusts and foundations across Scotland. We're not huge, but by any stretch of the imagination, we've got about 58 members at the moment. That represented last year about £381 million of investment into Scotland through grant making activity. I did a quick look just before today. So of that, 46 are full members, which are organisations making grants of over £50,000 a year, who are based in Scotland and grant making in Scotland. Of those 46, 19 in the last year have directly funded or awarded funding for sports projects, so just under 50% of our members. The range of scale, of size, of geography, of theme is significant. On our website, which I'll share, there is a full breakdown of the membership of the grant makers. But I guess as an organisation, we exist to promote the voluntary sector. Our founding principles are around fostering and informing good practice and the administration, the governance, the leaderships of trusts and foundations, affording our members opportunities for collaboration, for learning, for discussion, education, and networking, and engaging in projects that make that so, which I guess is part of why I'm here today, is to really listen to the feedback from members of the SSA. I'm delighted actually that some of our members are represented in the funders network that has already presented, but my role really will be to share some of the feedback, the wonders, the considerations that come out of discussion over the next hour, and for us as a network of funders to think about how we might take some of those thoughts forward, how we may connect, and what opportunities exist. Thematics for us moving forward are growing around how we get better at sharing learning as funders, how we make our applications as straightforward, as easy as possible, how we make our funds as accessible and easy to reach the communities we seek to serve. There's increasing incidence of collaborative funding, and we've had that mentioned already. Julie shared some of the work that Cora's been doing around pulling funders together around shared resource. So these are all very live and topical conversations within the funders network. So keen to ensure that we remain aligned and relevant with the communities we seek to serve who are represented today. So a bit of a listening brief, a learning brief for me. So thank you for having us, Kim.
Not at all, Ali, and hugely appreciated. And I think I'm optimistic there's a bit of a learning brief for us all in that sense. As the Minister said, that this has never happened or come together before. So it demonstrates, I think, the commitment that we all share to equalities, but also a new way of thinking and working to think, as you say, how can we collaborate a different way? How can we have different senses of thinking to try and bring together new partnerships that make a difference in a different way? And I'm delighted that you've all, I think, pretty much touched on that wider contribution, as the Minister said, that sport and physical activity can make. For those of us around the table who sport is part of every day, whether that's the job or out with the job, it's something we're all very passionate about. But I think everybody on this call, from a sporting point of view, very much recognises that sport and physical activity has many unintended consequences, which are incredibly beneficial. So unintended benefits, I suppose, should have been my phrase, and that impact that it can have on people, and why we know that the people who get most out of being physically active are those who are furthest from being physically active. And that's something our members are all absolutely engaged in and really keen to see how best we can make a difference. So knowing that, as so many of you have touched on, it's loneliness, it's confidence, it's programmes that we saw running throughout COVID and that can still continue around isolation, around providing hot meals, around a wide range of things that sports can do. So I'm delighted to now turn to our members. So we've asked each of our members to provide a very short update on either a project that they are working on in the equality space or something they're looking to start working on in that equality space. So we're very keen, as the Minister said, that this prompts new thinking. So hopefully it's almost a bit of a sort of informal matchmaking. I know we didn't call it that, Emma, but we'll go with that. An informal matchmaking of people being able to say, well, there's something in here that might work for our funds, and delighted that can be for funds that are open in the future and not just those that are or aren't open just now. So it's not an easy pitch, I realise. So members, I think we'll give you a minute and a half each if I can, which is, I'm conscious, 50% more generous than I think I said I would be. So I'll take that as being nice. Gregor's not on the call today. It's usually him that's good cop, I think, in these things. So in no particular order, but just the order that I've got you up on my list here. I'm going to apologise that Mark, you're going in first there, so you're getting a brief advanced warning there. So we're going to lead with Mark from Scottish Disability Sport, which we're going to follow up then with Keith from Scottish Hockey. So if you're just able to introduce yourselves as you start, then please, and then, as I say, we'll hear from you guys. After that, we're then going to go into questions. So if everybody can have a little thought from there, if there's questions you want to ask about funds, about funding generally, principles of funding, or if there are questions around some different sports, because equally you might want to work in partnership with other sports as part of this. So really excited about that. Mark, that was my padding to give you a little bit of notice there. So hand over to Mark.
Don't worry, I saw that one coming. Thanks. Thanks for the minute and a half. You're all hard. I've always said that. So thank you for that. We are Scottish Disability Sport. My name is Mark Gaffney. I'm the head of policy. We work, by the very nature, we work in the equality space. So again, I'm going to be greedy and highlight two specific projects within the remainder of my 90 seconds. There are two very different ones. One is an on-the-ground delivery, and there are our parasport days. So these are for funders that are looking for the kind of real national outcomes. So right across Scotland and into the island communities as well. We know that 85% of children are in mainstream education and are harder to reach in that respect to introduce them to sport. So our parasport days are designed to tackle those inequalities in education and in community sport. It's an opportunity for underrepresented groups to access an array of activities and sports in a day that have strong exit routes into robust local clubs. And they receive bespoke support from our regional manager team to do so. So it's about managing the expectations, recalibrating what success looks like, and everybody's on a different journey there to a positive outcome. So everything's done in collaboration. We obviously look at the intersectionality of everything, that one person isn't defined by one characteristic. So and they represent all over. So the other thing that we look at, the second project, is really about how do we change culture, how do we change behaviour, and that's through our education and training programme. So more recently, we've been able to get in front of every trainee primary teacher and every single PE teacher, which is hugely important in terms of changing culture and behaviour. We deliver UK disability inclusion training so that when they are going into their workforce and in HNC and HND courses, sports coaches and colleges as well, when they are then going into their workplace, that everything is more naturally inclusive by design, thanks to the training they receive there. But obviously at the moment, we are on a funding to funding, year to year type scenario. And that's me.
Thanks, very much appreciate it, Mark. You'll be delighted you're the first person that's failed the funding test, but the timing test, but you've had the shortest to go with, so that's all good. Thanks, Mark. And again, for colleagues, and I think sports colleagues, because again, Scottish Disability Sport work across quite a number of governing bodies as well as the funders. You know, it's an area of work that really doesn't just change lives, as Emma was saying. It's an area of work that saves lives, certainly, as well. So thanks, Mark, very much appreciated. We're going to move to Keith from Scottish Hockey, and then we're going to come to Lucy from Horse Scotland, if that's all right. So Keith, long time no see, but lovely to see you. I'll hand over to you.
Long time no see, 1 minute 30, and you know how much I like to talk. So hi everyone, I'm Keith McLeod, I'm the engagement manager here at Scottish Hockey. I'd just like to briefly touch upon our bold approach to equality, diversity and inclusion with our esports pilot campaign and potential summer camps. Competitive electronic sports is ubiquitous in modern culture, with 91% of UK under-15s and 60% of UK adults playing some form of video game regularly. The benefits of esports are multifaceted, from young girls who participate 3.3 times more likely to study STEM, and to 64% of university level, college level gamers being physically active 3 times per week. We intend to use esports to augment its sporting participation, education and life skills contributions to public life. In partnerships with our key stakeholders, we will create a £20,000 multi-sport esports hub in the heart of Glasgow, augmenting the 5 million Glasgow National Hockey Centre, which has been very topical in the press recently, I'm sure you're all aware. But delivering valuable esports sessions and attracting a non-endemic audience to our sport, we intend to launch a wider digital strategy centred around this equipment, exploring areas of high deprivation, social isolation, minority communities. We intend to target everyone to use esports to bridge the gap between those who are not participating in hockey and physical health and activity to those who should and potentially will be. And in timing myself, I've got 1 second left.
Nicely done, Keith. Nicely done. You can tell it's a comms person that's nailed the minutes timing. So I think you've set the benchmark there, Keith. Very well done. And again, a really innovative and unique project. I know we're going to hear from James at Esports Scotland shortly as well. So a super partnership already been established there. Very, very much appreciated. So next we've got Lucy from Horse Scotland, and then we've got Robin from the Scottish Football Association. So Lucy, lovely to see you again. If I can hand over to you. Lucy was here earlier. Did we lose you, Lucy? As I'm trying to look across my screens and see if you're there. I can't see Lucy just now, so she may have dropped off. Apologies, Robin, that bumps you up slightly with a little bit less time. Robin, is that okay? I think this is your first SSA Funders Forum as well, so lovely to see you, Robin. But is that all right? Are you happy to go next? And in which case, thereafter you, I'm going to come to... well, you see, good try there, folks. Good try there, folks. After you, I'm going to come to, I don't know if it's Roger or Lara from Canoe, but I'll come to you afterwards. Robin, thanks very much.
Hi everyone, I'm Robin Drummond, the Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Manager for the Scottish Football Association. I'm going to quickly pitch two things that we're doing. The first is football versus homophobia, and we're delighted to be partnered with Leap Sports Scotland. I can see Monroe's on the call today as well. This is a campaign that we run annually. February is our big month of action. The target is to get more members of the LGBTIQ plus community involved in the game, but also get the whole game thinking about how we can be more inclusive of the LGBTIQ plus community. This year, we're going to expand it beyond a month and make it a year of education. The target is to have education practice across every facet of football. So that is within our clubs, our club leaders, coach education, refereeing. We already do some of these things, but the ambition is to go really, really deep in a lot of the education that we deliver, to have it embedded in all of the education pathways for staff coming through, and then development within the workforce as well. We're committing quite a lot of internal funding to it, but there is more that we would like to achieve. It would be great to have additional support on that. The second thing I'll quickly pitch is around care experience. It's been mentioned a number of times on the call. We are working towards becoming a voluntary corporate parent alongside Sports Scotland, who are a corporate parent already, and what that will look like. The drive for that is being led by one of our youth ambassadors of change, excuse me, who's a young person who's volunteering with the Scottish FA. They're bringing lived experience to the topic and discussing their own personal journey through being care experienced and what football has meant to them and how football can impact more care experienced people in the future. And I'll stop there. Thanks.
Fab. Thanks, Robin. That's great. No, it's lovely to hear. I know that the breadth of, well, I say I know the breadth. I know part of the breadth of work I think that you all do at the Scottish FA in that sense, Robin, but great to be able to highlight a few of those. So very much appreciated. That's super. So now we are on to, I don't know if it's you, Roger, or if it's Lara at Scottish Canoe, and then I'm going to come to, I think it's James at Esports afterwards. So Roger or Lara, whichever of you please from Canoe, that would be lovely.
Yeah, I'm going to come on in there. Thank you.
Thanks, Lara.
Yeah, Development Manager for the Scottish Canoe Association. And we do loads of work in the equality EDI space. But one area that we're particularly struggling with is one of our projects around supporting ethnically diverse communities and getting them into paddle sport. We've got so few people from those communities currently engaged in the sport that we're really starting from almost from ground zero. And we're currently running a project that's internally funded, which is about training people to be qualified coaches, people who are from ethnic diverse communities themselves and who have connections with their own communities and desire to do more outdoor sport, and getting them trained up to be coaches and leaders so they can then be self-sufficient within their own communities. We started the project in May last year, and we've got a team of 12 people working on it. We want to recruit again next year, but we're doing it on a shoestring, to be honest, and we really need some more funding to help us be able to make it happen, and follow it through so that these people get qualified, and then are starting to offer and be able to offer activities within their own spaces, and spaces where having access to something like paddle sport would be a complete luxury. So yeah, that's us.
Wonderful. Thanks, Lara. I was trying to pre-position people for questions, but you're ahead of me as ever, so nicely done. That's super. Much appreciated, Lara. And next we come to James from Esports, and thereafter we'll come to Monroe from Leap. So James, great to see you. I think this is also your first Funders Forum, so great to see you on it.
It's amazing. Thank you very much for having me. I hope you can hear me okay. I'm currently down at Bet in London and we're running some esports tournaments regarding education. So I managed to take the call, so it's very busy behind me, so I hope you can hear me. Just to try and help drown the noise out, I'm going to put my picture on a bit of paper, so you hope you don't mind, I'll read it out. Esports Scotland's mission is to pioneer inclusion, diversity, and sustainability through education. And our commitment lies in leveraging esports as a platform to foster a community that embraces diversity, promotes inclusion, and educates for a sustainable future, ensuring equal opportunities and empowering individuals through the world of gaming. If you don't know what esports is competitive gaming, where basically people come together and use the power of gaming to compete for prizes. So, we're basically seeking funding to enhance diversity and inclusion initiatives. As you know, gaming is primarily dominated by male. The proposed plan includes appointing an outreach manager, organising mixed tournaments, establishing mentorship programmes, hosting for underrepresented groups, for example, women and LGBTQ communities, fostering inclusive gaming spaces, partnering with schools to promote girls' interest in esports, and showcasing positive role models in the industry. The comprehensive strategy also aims to create a more diverse and inclusive esports community. We've basically seen what people in similar roles down south of British esports have managed to achieve, and we feel like with the right backing and funding, we could do something really fantastic up here in Scotland. So, thank you.
You're up there with Keith on the spot on timing, James. So very well done, Keith. I'm afraid you're sharing any spoils or prizes that come as a result of that. So well done, James. Very much appreciated.
Keith's better than mine.
Not at all. Not at all. Fab. Monroe, over to you, please. I think it's also your first of these calls, so that's super. And then after you, we'll hand over to Nadine Parker as well. So back to you, Monroe, please.
Hi there, thanks for having me. I'm Monroe, the Participation and Engagement Manager at Elite Sports. I'm standing in for our Executive Director, Hugh Torrance today. As I know, probably what most of you do know the charity, but we're Scotland's LGBTQ+ sports charity, much like Scottish Disability Sport. We live and breathe EDI in sport across the country. Two elements for our work I'm going to talk about today is our community mental health and wellbeing projects, particularly in rural areas, but also our education resource offering. We have 4 projects across the country in Highlands, Perth and Dundee, Ayrshire, and in Edinburgh as well, which focuses on capacity building, working with participants to reduce social isolation, improve mental health and well-being by using sport and physical activity. And we're, with the projects we work on with them, they're often on quite short fundings that are only like an annual, so we're always looking for longer term funding for those. And then for our education and resource element, this is a part of our work we're always looking to develop. We work with partners across the sector to develop education, but we're always looking, but that's always taken from little parts of different projects across the work that all we do. And we're also always looking to sort of further develop that. I hope I was within that minute and 30 there, Kim, but I'll pass back.
You're all doing incredibly well here. I'm impressed. So Nadine, thanks very much. That's great that you're listening, but that's no problem at all. So last but by no means least is Bowles. So Roz, am I right in saying that that's you? I know you've got a couple of colleagues on the call, but is it you, Roz? Is that right? And I know this is your first call as well, much as we spoke the other day. But...
Yep, I think it's going to be me.
Fab, crack on. That's lovely.
Awesome, thank you. So with the recent appointment of myself, so I'm the Equality, Inclusion and Welfare Manager here at Bowles Scotland, and my role is basically to live and breathe EDI. So we are working on various projects, but one of the kind of main ones is women and girls are significantly underrepresented across the sport and in leadership positions. So we've a kind of 3-stage project with an internal data gathering, basically pulling all our data together to understand where we're at in terms of volunteers, coaches, players, etc. And then we're working with Edinburgh and Napier students who are doing a research proposal and are basically looking into the barriers that women face in gaining leadership positions. So they're working directly with our members. With all of that data, and once we kind of pull it together and look at it, we're hoping that will fuel a project looking at some sort of kind of female leadership ambassador program, maybe called Bowles. So that's kind of the kind of long-term goal of those kind of 3-stage project, and that's in line with an equality action plan that's kind of been developed, and that will be over the next 4 years. So yeah, that's it. Whistle stop time. Thank you.
Wonderful. I have to say, I don't think I've ever been on a call where so many people, I say I've stuck to time. I don't normally sit like the person from Countdown with the phone, unless those who've been to the leaders' dinners where I genuinely do sit like with that, because it's the only way to keep things working. So thank you all enormously for your forbearance with that. It's been wonderful. And I know the Minister was just saying the same thing to me there, to just hear so many things that are going on, but also the opportunity and the appetite that people have to do things differently and to explore new opportunities. So I've just missed. Oh, thank you, Robin. Right, I'll pick that up as well. I think the first question that's come in the space was a little bit around leadership. So Lara mentioned that in terms of coaches and leaders, and I know that's a huge space across sport. So as we consider the work that we do with our members and that members talk to us about, it's the regular conversations that we have with Marie Todd. It's part of the conversation that the Health, Social Care and Sport Committee did in their recent inquiry into women and girls participation. Role models so often comes up as a priority. That you can't be what you can't see being a big theme with that, which I think is beyond women and girls as a specific strand. I think it's a big part of equalities more generally, and I think leadership is a huge part of that. So I think, Lara, you were asking if there are existing projects that we could look at that fund in that space already that we can learn lessons from, or if that's an area that funders are looking at or have got knowledge about, or new opportunities we could think there. So it's a great, hopefully, opening question. So feel free to just chip in, folks. We're not standing on ceremony here, so feel free to unmute and just pitch in if people have got thoughts on that. Okay, nothing springing to mind at the moment. I'm conscious there's quite a lot going in the chat box, which is super. Beck is already pulling together some of the notes that have come from the chat box there, and as she was saying, she will be sending out a list of other funds that are open just after this meeting. So maybe that's a conversation that we can come to around leadership and what that looks like, and that role modelling. As many of you will know, October every month is Women and Girls in Sport Week, and a very common theme around that is leadership. And as Lauren, who's on the call, who leads that programme, will remind us, the theme for this year's Women and Girls in Sport Week, I hope I'm allowed to say that, Lauren, is leadership. But again, very keen on this call that extends, beyond women and girls, much as that's important. But recognising that intersectionality is a theme that you raised, Mark, and I think that's come across a wide number of other sports and with other partners. Again, thoughts potentially maybe from the funders more specifically around that, around how best. I suppose part of the challenge we hear from governing bodies and from clubs sometimes is applying for funds can be very difficult. So and difficult to know sometimes how to apply. So if you're applying for a fund, Helen, I know you mentioned Bailey Gifford Sports Fund. It's a great example where sports say that fund sport, I know that's really easy for us. To understand how to apply and what that looks like. So if it's a sports fund, it's easier. Sometimes the harder things for sports are where it's cross-cutting in that sense, to say, well, it might be about mental health, but it might also be about disability, and it might be about ethnic minorities, and it might be about loneliness. So trying to juggle crossing quite a number of different aspects of intersectionality in equality space can be quite tricky. Has anybody got any thoughts or advice on sort of navigating that from a funder point of view?
A couple of quick things. I think often it's really hard when you feel like you're trying to bend something into somebody else's boxes. I would say don't do that. Just tell folk what you want to do. And certainly from our perspective, we're a pretty broad-based funder. So at some point in the process, the thing you actually want to do will become visible anyway. So I encourage folk to take care not to move too far from your intention in order to meet a funder's requirement. The other thing to remember about funders is that funders depend entirely on you guys and the people who apply to us. And that while there feels like there's a lot of power relationships going on there about those of us who hold funding, we're scooped if folk don't apply, right? We're out of work. So it's not as simple a relationship as that. And so be clear about what you want to do and why you want to do it. And everywhere you can, and not every funder is able to be resourced in the way to do this, but have the conversations. What I always say to folk who are interested in our funding is it's always worth the price of a phone call and a conversation with folks on our advice line. And we will, half the time we will say to folk, actually don't do the work of filling an application form to the fund, because it's not going to fit and it's unlikely to be successful. And that feels like a more honest adult conversation to have, and also saves wasting an awful lot of folks' time. So be clear that the applications we see that are successful are when people are clear about what they want to do and why they want to do it. So that would be what I would always encourage folk to do.
Thanks, Neil. That's super, and I think chimes a little bit with. Sorry, Helen, I know you're having an unmuting problem. Apologies for that. I think that chimes with what a few others of you have said in terms of updating processes for application. Laura, were you going to come in there as well?
I was just going to probably add slightly to what Neil said. I mean, I think I said that at the start. Definitely give us a call and speak to us. And I know when I used to apply for funding from the other side, I felt that if I spoke to the funder, it would almost put them off if I answered questions wrong or said the wrong thing. So I would be somebody who wouldn't do that. But I know from the other side, if somebody's spoken to us, they've got a much better chance of being funded, not because of what they've said, but because we've been able to say, look, we will not fund work in schools. Don't put that application in. However, you mentioned you're doing evening sessions. Why don't you apply for that? We can, so it's not just us saying yes or no, it's saying actually, what about doing something slightly different? And we don't always have the resources to have huge conversations, and we can't look at applications, but definitely we can talk around what you're doing, and you don't want to waste your time putting an application in for something that we just absolutely as a funder can't fund, but we might be able to suggest other things that might work. So yeah.
Thanks, Laura. That's super, and I think that chimes with what a couple of you said in terms of have the chat. A number of you work across a network of different funds, so if it's not Fund A, actually it might be Fund B or a different colleague that to speak to. And I suppose, I guess just the nature of what we all do is about those relationships. It's, as you say, about being clear and intentional about what we're trying to do, having those conversations and following the signposts of, the funders on the call who are experts in this, and knowing that, governing bodies know what they're trying to do and who they're trying to reach and how they can help. So no, that's some really good tips there. Does anybody else want to check anything in on that part? No.
Sorry, I just wanted to say I have to go. I'm being summoned. Yeah, I'm actually, I'm kind of working at the same time, so I don't know if I'm just pushing it to this meeting. So I'm going to have to go at the moment, but it's been a pleasure meeting everybody, and I hope we'll be in touch soon.
Wonderful. Thanks, James. That's super much appreciated. Ali, I think you were going to come in there as well.
Yeah, I was just going to build on what colleagues have said. I absolutely echo kind of Neil and Laura's point. We have funds that we want to give away. We want to spend them. It's our job to get them out the door. Nobody's holding on to things because they want to, or because there's anything else going on in the background. But just to build on that sort of relational piece and having the conversation, my advice would be keep the conversation going. Once the relationship is forged and the grants are committed, keep that connection live. We've got funders on the call who have hundreds of funds, open at any one given time. And so there needs to be a reciprocity in terms of being proactive in that communication. If there's a change, if there's an unintended outcome that you find quite exciting, chances are your funder will find it quite exciting too. Share that with us. If things are going awry, we're not going to pull a multi-year contract. We want to understand why. Can we support the learning? How do we move forward? We're all in funding because we care about people, we care about impact, we want to know more, do better, but we're not on the ground doing the work that excites us. A lot of the time, that's what our partners do, and so there is a reliance on that information flow. So absolutely have the conversation, pick up the phone, but don't stop that when the funding is committed, because I think that's when we can really deepen and strengthen relationships.
Thanks, Ali. That's another really important message, and I know chimes with part of what you've put in the chat box, Fiona, about having that sort of critical friend to read. But I know that's something that you guys do at Impact Funding Partners as well, Fiona, in terms of, you've got a number of different mechanisms where you provide support and different options and things, and knowing that we work with you on some of that stuff, it is really valuable. Do you want to talk just a little bit about where that adds value, which I think builds really nicely on what Ali was saying?
Yeah, can do. So we have developed, we call them clusters. So it's cluster meetings of funded organisations, and they come together either kind of once a month or once every quarter from all of the different funds that we manage. They come together to access development support. So whether that's free training opportunities that we offer, at the start of every fund as well, we ask organisations to complete a project needs assessment. So we find out where their training needs are, and then we develop free training from that. One of the most recent cluster meetings that we did was kind of similar idea to this, kind of like a Q&A, but it was with assessors of lots of different funds, not just within Impact Funding Partners, but assessors that work on other funds as well. And that allowed currently funded organisations to ask them what they look for when assessing funding applications, and it was the first time we've ever done it, and it was so well received. So that's probably something that we'll continue to do with our funded organisations. But as kind of others have said on the call, kind of pick up the phone and ask. We can't. Other funders might be able to, but we're unable to kind of give advice or feedback on applications that haven't yet been submitted before you submit, but we definitely try to give feedback afterwards. Even if you're successful, we try to give feedback, because there'll still be elements where there's room for improvement and things, and then if you've not been successful, sometimes capacity for funders, it's hard to to give that feedback, but if you don't hear, definitely drop an email, because there might be a chance that you do.
Super, thanks, Fiona. It's nice to hear, just as you say, some of the background and how that works. And the session with the assessors was great. I was on that one with you. It was really interesting. So, and then Julie, that's great to see, again, reinforcing the point about having that chat, but that there are eligibility checkers, which hopefully just make that a little bit less daunting. Is that what you find with that, Julie? It's a little bit less daunting for people to apply, because they think, right, I can have a quick check that this is going to fit, that this might work.
Yeah, it's one of the commitments we've made to the open and trusting grant making principles, and it's you won't get through to the application on most of our funds until you've completed that, and you can check if you're eligible. And if it's kind of like we think you might be eligible, as an option then to have a chat with the grant advisor. But our grant advisor is always really keen to just, arrange a time to chat over the phone or on Zoom or whatever, and talk through your idea before applying, because we absolutely don't want people to waste time applying and filling out long application forms. So yeah.
Super, thank you. It's those ways that, as you say, make best use of everybody's time, knowing that we all share this commitment to doing, to making the impact that you've all talked about. I suppose one of the eligibility parts that often comes up across our membership is charities versus non-charities. So maybe just it's worth touching on that as a thought. So SCVO, which I'll hold my hand up as a board member, so a conflict of interest there in that sense. So SCVO would tell you that about 46,000 voluntary sector organisations, of which 13,000 are sports clubs. So sports clubs are a third of the sector, but very few sports organisations are charities. So that's always an interesting question for us, just when we're on that topic of eligibility. It's always a very interesting question across our membership. Now, a few of our governing body members are charities. So Market Scottish Disability Sport, you guys are one. A few have charitable arms, where there's an aspect of the organisation as a charity. But across the 13,000, very few actually are and fit into that mould. How much of a barrier is that at this stage? Is that a conversation that we need to have as sport, or we need to have collectively? Or is it very much we're in a synergistic place around the outcome and the impact that we're trying to have, and that's the most important part? So we'd be really keen for any thoughts or reflections on that, folks.
I could touch a bit on what Cora's done. We've definitely recognised that we need to fund more than just charities, and in the past few years a lot of our programmes have opened up to include KICs, social enterprises, and we also fund non-constituted groups as well through our smaller programmes, which we found has been quite a change, but there's been a huge appetite for these small grants for people who are running sports clubs and different bits and pieces in their communities. So I don't think it's just us either. I think lots of funders are starting to recognise that not everyone wants or needs to be a charity. So I think there is a move towards funding more than just charities, but others I'm sure will jump in and share their thoughts.
Fab, thanks, Julie. And Helen, hopefully your unmute will, oh, there we are, success.
Thanks. Yeah, I was going to actually say something to Julie there, but I think actually if you look at the grants that Foundation Scotland makes, I think more go to organisations that aren't registered charities than do go to actual charities. So constituted community groups is probably the biggest area that we fund, predominantly because we make small grants, I think. So our average grant is about £5,000. So it sits itself better for kind of smaller organisations, but sports associations, sports groups are absolutely eligible, so there's no kind of restriction on having to be a registered charity to apply to Foundation's funding.
Super, thanks, Helen. That's really reassuring. And then Neil and I think Ali have both got thoughts. Wonderful.
So straightforward for us at National Lottery Community Fund, you don't have to be a charity to apply to us, but you do have to not be distributing our money as profits to folk, and that's pretty much the only criteria. What I would say, thinking of fellow funders in the wider funding forum in Scotland, that the challenge there often is how they are constituted at root. And so some funders don't have a lot of choice in this area. But broadly, our sense has always been that you shouldn't ask an organisation to change who they are to fit your criteria if you don't have to.
Thanks, Neil. That's a really reassuring principle, and I think will be music to ears for a lot on the call, where it's a very difficult conversation as to what to do for the best. So that's super. Ali as well.
Yeah, I think looking across our membership, there are still a number of trusts and foundations where it absolutely is a parameter that you have to be kind of Oscar registered. And I think it's a conversation that needs to be kept live. And I think that the question today and the statistic that you shared there, Kim, highlights the importance of it. I see our role as a members network is to challenge some assumptions and habits and norms if we don't feel they are supportive of moving our sectors forward. So it's a question that comes up. It's a question that some have fixed positions on. Other people are beginning to move and look at different forms of constitution. Sometimes it comes from scale. Some of our smaller members just don't physically have capacity to deliver the due diligence on organisations, and they rely upon our kind of office of the charities regulator to give that comfort that due diligence is done. So I think there will still be a number of trusts and foundations that have that as criteria, but keep asking the questions because it keeps the conversation alive for us as funders, and it helps hold a mirror up to habits and norms to ensure that we're progressing apace. Because if we don't have these collaborative conversations, we can't ask the right and relevant questions of ourselves in our practice.
Thanks, Ali. I really welcome that. And I'll come to you just in a moment, Laura. I really welcome that. And I guess it's a question we've been asking as the Scottish Sports Association for a while. And I understand due diligence and the connection with Oscar as being a priority for that. So if we take sport in two levels, so the members on the call here are governing bodies for their sports in Scotland, most of which are companies limited by guarantee. So yes, they don't fit under the Charities Act, but they fit under the Companies Act. So there's no question of due diligence in that sense as things fit. Most of them are funded by Sport Scotland, not all of them, but most of them are receipt of public funding. So again, as you would expect, again, are subject to quite a wide number of regulations and due diligence that fit under that, including audits by KPMG around their governance. So where we're talking about a company limited by guarantee, the charitable due diligence, I don't think is the same as an issue. But again, you're right, it's a conversation because it's probably something funders have maybe never heard us say before. The vast majority of sports clubs are unincorporated organisations. So that is a challenge for sport to talk about what that is. That's a conversation that we have with Lauren and colleagues in the Active Sport Division quite a lot to say, what does that mean in terms of opportunity or challenge? But as I say, it's a third of the sector. So it's a huge, huge chunk to keep talking about.
Can I just, sorry, I know that Colin has a hand up, but just to build on that, and it's a completely separate conversation I was having with somebody the other day about reserves policies. And it was actually about having that proactive statement ready. You know, that, yeah, maybe eligibility criteria is about being a registered charity, but as you've just done, it's asking why. And if it is about giving comfort, then that proactive statement around constituted status and what that means and stands for saves the conversation sometimes, and it's just worth that check. And that, as I say, supports keeping the conversation live and keeping the challenge there so that you're not changing who you are, but forcing funders to keep up with practice.
I think that's exactly it, Ali, and it's a very welcome conversation. And I guess I feel instinctively that a lot of people, colleagues on the call aside, because quite clearly you're experts in this area, but a lot of people use the word charity very generally, and they mean the whole of the voluntary sector. They actually, so I mean, I was having a chat with somebody in the procurement team at the Scottish Government not all that long ago, and he's saying, but you're all the same thing. And I'm saying, well, no, the vast majority of the voluntary sector, or 2/3 of it, are charities. But actually, you know, if you start to look at the sector, in my head, the voluntary sector fits into two bags. It's a bag that ends things. It ends poverty, it ends homelessness, as absolutely rightly and very importantly it should. but the other part of the voluntary sector enables and engages communities and in people in different aspects. And the largest part of that is sitting in front of you all today, and struggles to access a lot of funding for different reasons. So they are questions we will keep asking, Ali, so I'll apologise for that because it's a bit of a challenge for our members in there, but it's a very worthwhile conversation to understand, you know, what the background to that would be. Laura, I'm very sorry you've waited very patiently. You wanted to come in there.
It's fine. I don't have an awful lot to add on that. I mean, we have our central minimum standards team, and I'm not going to even pretend to be an expert on what we do and don't need. It's, you know, we do ask for a lot, but I think it's similar to somebody else said. It's really about the not profit making. That's the main one for us, but it's organisations having to have their own governing documents, their own safeguarding policies and documents are our kind of core things that they have to have. We did have a discussion about constituted, non-constituted with our newer the Big Sky grants I mentioned, because they're only 5,000, which is a lot less than we normally have. But in the end, we've gone with they do still have to be constituted organisations to receive our funding. But it is something that we've had discussions around. So.
I think that makes perfect sense, Laura. The idea that there's accountability for funding is something that our members are not shy of by any manner of means. I suppose it's working out what provides that accountability, so people can sleep at night, that they know that they've invested in the right sets of things. But I guess I sit in the luxurious position of knowing that the many hoops that our members jump through any number of areas and saying, well, yeah, they are all required to meet minimum operating requirements around safeguarding, or they're not going to get any public funding. So actually, I'd like to think again that there's commonality in those things. Asset lock again is a fundamental requirement I would expect in any constitution across our membership and beyond. So maybe that's an interesting conversation, Ali, to explore in future around what those minimum requirements are, and Helen, maybe across the range of funds that you and others work on, to say, is there a synergy? Are we just talking about different terms, but actually the language is the same? But that actually we could open up more opportunities to talk about the types of outcomes that the Minister outlined, and the opportunities that we could come from today. So maybe that's a future area of work. It's not a small one, so we'll move on very briefly from that. I'm just going to pop up the final poll again for members only, if that's okay. Funders, we will come back to you separately for sort of any feedback or thoughts that you have, if that's okay. I guess the last thought I'm keen to get from people is, sorry, as I'm working out, my colleague Gregor usually does these things for me. And there we are, sorry, so that's the end poll there. My apologies. Is just a bit around, a number of you've mentioned sort of multiple funders, where again you might work in partnership with other funders to enable a particular project to move forward. How best might an organisation start in that space? If you know that there are a number of funders that you might want to approach, do you approach them at the same time? Are you open and honest about the different funders that you've approached? Any sort of thoughts or tips on moving that forward might be very well received, knowing that I think that is a huge opportunity that you've all raised today. Do any funders have thoughts on that?
Yeah, losing my voice though, which doesn't help. I think it's always best to be upfront and share if you're approaching other funders. Certainly if it's a large project, for example, certainly what we'll do is, if we know there's other funders that are being approached, we might have conversations with them, or kind of bring us around the table to have a conversation about how that funding package might look. So I think it's always really good to share who you're approaching for funding and what elements you're kind of different projects you're expecting those funders to look at. And then you might find that there's ways around how to do multiple application forms, for example. We've only done it once or twice, so we've had a kind of shared application process rather than making an organisation fill out full forms for 4 funders. So it's certainly worth speaking to funders if that's what we're going to do, I would say.
Wonderful, thanks Helen. And Ali?
Yeah, I echo what Helen said there. Neil and I sat on a funders panel last year together, and there was a bit of pressure around, you know, a perception that grant makers were asking applicants to collaborate, to pool resources, to come together, to do joint applications. And the assumption was that as funders, we don't collaborate. But I think we're in a kind of ecosystem now where there's ever deeper collaboration, conversation happening between trusts and foundations and grant makers. We're looking for opportunities to come together at a surface level to learn. And then, you know, even if we're pooling resources, pooling capacity. So yes, have the conversation, be open and honest, and let us know where you're applying. Because very often it comes out anyway, because we are in a number of collaborative networks and conversations, as any sector is. So we'd rather hear it from our partners and our grant holders than from our colleagues.
Wise words indeed. No, that makes sense, and hopefully some food for thought. I'm going to ask the Minister in just a moment if she has anything she'd like to say by means of closing. I know she may have had to drop off to another call, so just in case, I guess just very briefly to share to you some of the results from the poll that we've just done. So 100% of the governing bodies on the call have come away with actions from today's call. 90% are more likely to apply for your funds, having heard you speak today, and 100% would like more of these funders forums to have this kind of dialogue. So overwhelmingly positive feedback, which just echoes enormously my thanks to you all for giving up your time. As I say, I know quite a number of you really had to move heaven and earth to move diaries to be there, and I have to say it feels like it started an incredibly rich vein of conversation, of new ideas and new thoughts or new ways of working. So I cannot thank you all enough for giving up the time and joining today. The Minister's just saying she's had to join a call, but she'll be back in just a wee moment, hopefully. So hopefully we'll build from today. So our actions from today will be, Beck has pulled together a list of some of the chat that's been in the chat box. I know there's been a lot of links there shared. I really appreciate that. So we'll pull that into something that will come out as a result of today. Beck also has a list of funds, which I know is always very, very much appreciated, the support that, Fiona, you guys give at Impact Funding Partners to help to source some of that. So huge thanks to your colleagues there as well. So there will be a list that comes out of other funds that are open just now. If funders are willing, we will also share links to your websites and possibly even the email addresses if you're willing. So again, people can start to think, and if it's not yours and you prefer it to be somebody else's, please just let Beck know. That's not a problem at all. We'll come out and check that with you. But hopefully it means governing bodies can start to give a little bit of thought to, right, I'm quite interested in this, I'm quite interested to do that, and take up the offer that you guys have made today to start with an informal conversation. What could this look like? What would what could that move to be? We'll take up some of the actions that have come from us today, but I guess in particular as part of that super thanks, Laura. I'm particularly keen to follow up some of that thought around that regulation, that minimum requirement. So Ali, Helen, I'll maybe pick up with both of you as a starting point, but if that's a conversation that anybody else wants or would benefit from having, actually probably Cora as well. Julie, you said you've already made a move in that space, so I'll maybe pick up with you guys each individually to try and see if we can get a greater understanding of that as well, if that's okay. Are there any actions that I've missed there, folks? No? Okay. Fab, thank you. Everybody's popping in their funding. That's super. Thanks, Helen. I suppose that's the gold dust that everybody's saying, yep, we're all now really inspired. Let's get the web links to move everything forward. So I am very conscious of all your time. I will catch the Minister after, but I know she's already messaged me to say how thoroughly she has enjoyed today's session and just hearing the passion that people have for such an important subject area, but also the willingness and openness to work differently, to look at different kinds of partnerships. So on behalf of the Minister and the SSA, a huge thanks to you all. As I say, I know how much of you have given up a lot of other things to juggle around. So I'm really grateful, and we will be in touch. But thanks again. Lovely to see you folks.